Welcome to episode 4 of Setup Troubleshooting, and in this episode we're actually going to do a follow-up on Paul's setup which we analysed the last episode. So he's come back to me with a few of his findings. We're going to go through them, a few of the issues he's having, and we'll see if we can further enhance the setup from there. And Paul did have a look at both the Wilson Revolve 17 and the Luxland EcoPower 17, and after a little bit of thought he decided to go with the Wilson Revolve 17. So he's taken that out onto court for about a week now. He's been training with it at a few practice matches, and he's come back to me with a few things that he likes. The first being the increase in consistency. So from the back of the court, that means he's now able to take a few more risks, something he would never have been able to do before. And since he's able to do so, he's actually working on new patterns of play in order to try and win points that way. And so I'm happy to hear that. Hopefully we can continue helping Paul with his progression. And now let's get on to some of the issues that he's been facing. A quick recap of Paul's player profile. He's about 6'3" tall, and in between Eastern and semi-Western forehand grip, a one-handed Eastern backhand grip, and he would class himself as a baseliner. So he's tested it for about a week, and he's come back with two issues with the setup as it is. The first being that there's still a bit of string movement. There's a great improvement over the previous synthetic gut setup, but there's still a little bit of string movement. And the second issue is he's happy with the increased control from the setup, but he wants to know if I could take it even further. So those are the two problems we're going to try and tackle in this episode. And the first issue being string movement. I could point Paul towards string savers, but I'm not going to recommend it at the moment because I don't know how far these strings are moving out of place. If they are moving, say, like a couple millimeters, then string savers could work. But if they are moving more than that, 3, 4, and God forbid even higher, then string savers are a waste of time. The strings will move anyway and they'll just get stuck out of place as they are at the moment. And while we're on the issue of string savers, they do decrease the dwell time a little bit, and so that increases the shot speed, which can potentially decrease length control. So something to bear in mind. If the string movement is only slight, then consider string savers, as they are pretty easy to install. But if the string movement is more than a couple millimeters, then just discard this option. We'll go straight onto strings. And also please note that string savers are quite a high maintenance option in that you have to, well, you don't have to do anything really. I'm just strongly recommending you replace the string savers after every match, after every practice session, every time you go out on court and hit. This is because the string savers tend to wear down, and that grippiness that you find they have at the beginning where you install them, they no longer have, a couple hours into play, and that's why the string savers will start to move and get stuck out of place, despite their whole intention being to avoid or prevent that issue. So yeah, let's move on to some strings. The first string I want to take a look at is the Dunlop Black Widow 16, and that is because the deflection for this string is very low at 31.0 millimeters, and for a string at this stiffness rating, that is very rare. I believe it could be to do with the high string to string friction at 0.107, so the main string might struggle to move on the crosses and snap back. That could be a reason, but I'm not 100% sure, in all honesty. But this is good for the string movement, and also the other issue that Paul wanted to address, which was to further enhance the control. So we've got a slight increase in the stiffness to 193.2 pounds, so a little bit more length control in theory. We've got the same dwell time at 35.0 milliseconds. The tension loss percentage for the Black Widow is 38.2%, which is slightly higher than the Revolve 17 that's currently in your setup at 36.2%. So it's a little bit concerning because despite the increase in string stiffness, which should increase your length control, that decrease in, well, an increase in tension loss percentage, meaning a decrease in tension maintenance, could mean over the long run we'd have the same length control issues. And so this string would mainly be for addressing the string movement issue, as the deflection is a lot lower than your current string. Right, so I've had a look around for the Black Widow string, and I've come to a figure around about £12 to £15, including postage and packing. So that's not too bad at all nowadays for a string. If you don't string for yourself, you're probably looking to add another £10 to £15 on top of that. But it still does fit within your original budget of £30. So let's move on. And the second string I'm going to recommend is the Signum Pro Firestorm. It's the 1.25mm version. And the reason for this, we'll start off with the stiffness rating at 197.7. That's quite a big difference from your current setup at 192.0 pounds. You will feel the difference out on court in terms of impact and increase in length control. Although while we're on the issue of length control, if I go across to the dwell time, that is 34.0 milliseconds, so very low, really. Not extreme, but starting to approach that end of the spectrum. And so despite the stiffness rating being a lot higher than your current setup, the decrease in dwell time needs to be taken into account. This string is very different from the one in your setup at the moment, and so it might take a few sessions to really get used to the characteristics. If you're patient enough, give it a go and see how it works out for you. We're going to go across to the deflection, which is 31.6 millimeters. Again, a lot lower than your current string at 32.1, so a lot less movement. And with that, usually comes a lot more height, directional, and just overall general trajectory control. And I'm not entirely sure what surface you play on. If you want to let me know in the next video, but if it is a higher bouncing court, lower deflection can really help you with that height and trajectory control. So that is another positive potentially. And moving across, we'll have a look at the tension loss maintenance. I mean, look at that, 46.4%. That's not great at all. So hopefully the increase in stiffness is going to be able to offset that. But either way, let's move on to the energy return at 87.0%. I'd say about average. It's about average. Still could be a little bit too high on the shot speed scale. But the last number I want to look at is the string to string friction at 0.086. So probably a little bit higher for a polyester. But could be a good thing, as less string movement, again, usually means more trajectory and directional control. So that's the second string I wanted to recommend for you. As I said, it is a lot different to your current setup, so it might take a few sessions to get used to, but what you should find out on court is increased height and direction control. So you should be able to have access to shots you don't currently have with your current setup. For example, if Paul is coming up against opponents that use a lot of spin and bounce as a weapon, a string like Signum Pro Firestorm with its lower deflection will be able to better deal with that steeper bounce, and Paul may be able to take that on the rise as the increase in height and directional control allows him to do so. As this string has a much lower dwell time than the string that's currently in your setup, I wanted to go into a little bit of detail as to what one would expect as they go further along the scale in terms of setups that have lower dwell times. And as I've stated before, a lower dwell time usually means a higher shot speed, which usually is detrimental to your length control. But because setups with lower dwell times have the ball leave the string bed quicker then obviously a setup with a longer dwell time, it means that the ball will leave the string bed at a lower launch angle. That means the player will have to compensate by swinging at a sharper upward angle, otherwise the ball is going to go into the net. And because they have to compensate with that sharper upward angle, that means the player will usually play with a little bit more topspin, and that change in technique actually increases your length control. So you've kind of got these opposite forces working against each other. You've got the shorter dwell time decreasing length control, but the forced change in player technique increasing length control again. So a little bit complicated, but stay with me. It's somewhat similar to players that use extreme Western grips, in that because their racket face is slightly tilted forward, they have to swing at a sharp upward angle, otherwise their shot will just go straight into the net, or even worse. And it is this sharp upward angle that contributes to the, on average, increased spin that these players produce over similar players but with less extreme grips, you know, semi-westerns or eastern or even continentals. And I wanted to mention that because a player can't just use the performance database, see a string with a very low dwell time and assume they won't be able to control the length of their shot. There's other factors going into it, such as a lower dwell time usually causing a lower launch angle, the deflection, the string stiffness, etc. And that's the end of this episode. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you did enjoy it, it might be worth checking out our other content and staying tuned for future episodes. I do want to remind everyone that I also have a private subreddit where we discuss each other's setups, use data to analyze, and hopefully improve everyone's learning in the process. So if that sounds like something you'd like to be involved with, if you want to drop your Reddit username in the comments, or you can email it to me at cupenatennis@hotmail.com, I'll add you from there. You won't be able to find it until I do so, because I've set the subreddit to private. So I want to thank everyone again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you on the subreddit and everyone else on future videos. Until then, everyone, take care.